I've been pretty nice to Assassin's Creed Shadows. There are good reasons for that. Mostly that's because it's been pretty nice to me. For a player who really likes the stealth-focused vibes of the Assassin gameplay experience, Shadows is quite strong. On Expert especially, it hits a balance I've enjoyed in the short time I spent with it, where I can be powerful, I can be capable, but I'm not just handed unconditional victory for pressing the new game button. Unlike, say, Mirage, which has a fun, monstrously strong stealth power fantasy, but one that is easy to be immediately fantastic at and hard to really misplay in. However, there is an aspect of this game, Shadows, which I unambiguously dislike, and you all should know what it is, and those of you who don't may have misinterpreted the way I previously answered some questions. Personally, I don't think this video is necessary. Just because I haven't overtly touched on this topic yet doesn't mean my thoughts have changed, because they haven't changed. My position is still the same, so I will take a short moment to clarify now. My stance on Shadows Parkour is very similar to my stance on Unity Parkour, when I feel particularly mean about it. Pretty animations do not equate to good movement. Pretty animations are nice, they can improve movement that's already good, but whether a hyper-limited action pool has pretty animations or bland animations, it makes no difference to me personally. In the end, it's still a hyper-limited action pool. I'm having the same experience either way. A narrowing, a reduction of the number of unique decisions I can make during gameplay. Why didn't I bring this up until now? First, because I don't think I should have to repeat myself over and over when my opinion on something hasn't changed, and second, because unfortunately I am just one guy and I do genuinely have to do everything around here myself. My time is limited, my energy is limited, and with that in mind, I typically lean toward topics and aspects I feel are interesting to talk about first. Things that are fun for me to think about and analyze, and things I think will be fun for a viewer to listen to. That's where we come to the problem. Parkour isn't interesting in this game. So what am I supposed to talk about? Every time I've been asked about it, I've rotated through the same standard set of responses. I've either said that it's bad, or that if you like fancy animations and those are enough for you, you might be placated by those. I've mentioned it's nice to have an on-demand dive roll, and that doing a wall on grapple can be enjoyable, but apart from those tiny points, everything I've ever had to say about movement in this game has been negative. For those who are paying attention, that should have been enough. What would I mention that hasn't already been said, by myself, or even more so now, by other great creators? It's not interesting to talk about movement in this game, yet I'm still expected to talk about it, so I can say, what exactly? What you all already know? That it's bad, that it's weak? Sure, I could say that, but I have faith in people who watch me to understand that's the truth without me having to say it for you out loud. Because that's my position right now. It's tiring to conjure something to talk about when there's barely anything to say. I suppose I can instead use this video as a platform to do a little recap or reminder of why strong movement is valuable in Assassin's Creed and why it's valuable to me. What do I mean by movement being good or bad? There are different ways to judge whether a game mechanic or system is enjoyable, and I suspect some players who are less Assassin's Creed pilled than I am may look at and define this in a very different way from me and others like me. In short, for many players, parkour in Assassin's Creed is good when it doesn't present them with problems. You know what I mean. Letting a player make misplays, letting you throw yourself off edges or cliffs, letting you accidentally jump off a wall when you meant to keep climbing, unintentionally pathing onto an object you didn't want, things like that. If those frustrations are absent, in the eyes of some players, movement is good. But that's not how I see it at all, because that's only half of the equation. You gotta come back and finish your food. Where's the rest of it? To me, the absence of problems doesn't immediately equal the presence of quality. The space doesn't get filled with good now that the bad is gone. There is in fact still a vacuum left behind there that you have to do something with. And for players who knew how to leverage the upsides of those rough spots from past games, we also lose a lot of our power. We lose unique decisions we could have made during gameplay. And to us, that truly gets processed as a loss, because we enjoyed making those decisions regularly when they were available. We didn't just ignore them. Maybe you did ignore them when you played, and that's okay. I think everyone should be allowed to play in a way they find fun. But since I extend that respect to you, please consider being kind in turn to players who do miss those things. It's only fair. Assassin's Creed Parkour nowadays basically only takes pride in one thing, and that is not getting in the player's way. If someone holds forward and climb, can they get to where they want to go without too much frustration or volatile unexpected events happening? If yes, then great, parkour is officially good, ship the game. this is not enough for me. It's not enough for others like me, because it would be like if a grenade that prevented you from damaging yourself in a shooter also never took more than half an enemy's health. It's not frustrating because you can't kill yourself with it, so that's good, right? Well, no, because it's not doing what that mechanic is supposed to be doing. How good or strong something is should always be much less about ways I can misuse it, and much more about ways I can use it effectively. When you reduce those ways, when you reduce my number of unique decisions, I start to get very bored and very sad, and people start saying dumb bullshit about me because I'm struggling to find the willpower to discuss something that bores me so much to even think about. Ropotopoulos has made a fantastic deep dive video on the state of movement in this game, and rather than feeling restless that I didn't echo your own thoughts back at you, why don't you go support him instead? He's a great creator who puts in a lot of good work, and he will tell you exactly what I would tell you. I even left a great comment on his video. Every person who's underwhelmed with parkour and shadows, be they Ropo or Jcers or anyone else, they'll have my back because they know where I stand and it's more or less exactly where they do. My position hasn't changed. I just haven't restated it for the 100th time because I didn't think I needed to, it's obvious. Dive roll, grappling hook. These are really cool. These are actions unique and distinct to Shadows compared to previous games, and they let us plug certain gaps in that big soupy void of missing functions, similar to Focus and Mirage being an appreciative movement tool in a game that as a whole has very basic movement. Something is better than nothing, yes, but saying that is a bit like saying the sky is blue. It doesn't actually tell you anything meaningful, even though it's true. Movement in Assassin's Creed being underwhelming has two major effects on the play experience which matter a lot to me. One, it's less interesting, and two, it's less powerful. Being able to make fewer unique decisions means there's less texture to playing movement for its own joy, for its own pleasure. The process of deriving fun from that system caps out and ends very early. And on the note of it's less powerful, well, it means that you have fewer options to respond to unexpected enemy pressure. When you have to avoid detection or escape combat. When parkour is weakened, there are less ways for you to do that. So here's a cool way to think about it. Why is prone in AC Shadows? Prone is in AC Shadows because it's a distinct movement option that increases the amount of unique decisions we can make. It lets us do more things and make more choices while pathing through enemy space. Everyone intuitively knows that adds something to the game, even if they don't have the language to describe that. An extra way to avoid being seen or to access extra escape routes, that's immediately understandable as a good thing. So other movement actions being present or missing should be looked at through that same lens. Extend this to other movement and you can start pulling examples from different games. In AC2, if a guard is looking at me and I can quickly run up a wall and eject onto a roof nearby, I can leave his line of sight before he finishes detecting me. In a game with very range limited and very weakened ejects, doing that has a high chance of not working at all, so even attempting it would punish me for trying. That guard would probably detect me anyway. When movement is weakened, when movement has fewer unique decisions that can be made, we are less powerful. We have less ways to respond to a situation. Ways of pushing against guard pressure become more narrow, become less freeform. They shrink into being exactly the same for more and more players. In Shadows, since a wall run eject has extremely weak activation or resolve distance, like its range is really short that means I can't trust it in those high pressure scenarios where I need to quickly make a decision. In those cases where my stealth state is on the line, I'm very discouraged from using something like an eject for both fun and pragmatism because it doesn't work for either. Its range is so short, and whether it even activates or not is completely dependent on game state. It's not actually a decision I'm making. Because I'm such a stealth-focused player, there seems to be a subset of people who assume I don't care about movement somehow, even though I've been furiously sobbing and wailing about this system not being what I want for over 10 years. The thing is, this is obviously false, because you're making an untrue assumption, and that assumption is that weak movement somehow doesn't affect me. That weak movement doesn't change how I can do my stealth that I love so much, because it totally does. The example above should have been enough. But you can think of so many other scenarios where my stealth is weaker because the game's movement is restrictive, because the game's movement is weaker itself. Stealth and movement are intrinsically tied together, synergistically, intimately, in a way that stealth and combat really aren't. Think about it for 2 seconds and it immediately makes perfect sense, right? What is stealth about? Stealth is about putting your body in the right places at the right times, in the right ways, to prevent giving the enemy information you don't intend for them to have, to prevent the enemy detecting you. So what system governs how you do that again? Oh yeah, movement. The system that's about how you change your character's place in the game world, and the speed and consistency you're allowed to do that with. A comment I recently received on one of my videos asked me something along the lines of, why hasn't Assassin's Creed ever developed a parkour skill tree for one of its RPG titles? And my answer to that was a little laugh and a blunt, that's because it would be empty. Before you can even think about parkour skills, you should think about something else. Imagine a combat skill tree in a game without an attack action. You probably find that really hard to do. I do. But that's exactly what Assassin's Creed has kind of done to its movement. We haven't had manual jumps in this series for 11 years, the most ground level basic action in any movement other than just like walking around. And this is the reason I also disagree with people who say to me that I should just let go of this idea that Assassin's Creed should have decent movement, or that it's impossible, or that there's no way. I think people assume that what I'm asking for is something unreasonable or crazy advanced, or something that's just going to take an insane amount of effort and resources just to bring into existence, but I'm not. I hope that wouldn't. There are games flatter than Assassin's Creed with less movement emphasis and less movement focus that provide me with a jump button. Something I can press, usually on the bottom of my controller or keyboard, that when I press it, my character jumps in a direction I want. Assassin's Creed, a series which is to a great extent known for having free-form movement where you can climb anything, doesn't give me that button. If I had one wish, and someone was listening for what I want regarding movement in a future Assassin's Creed game, I would just say that. Let me press a button to jump, anytime I want, in any direction I want. No matter what state my character is in within reason. Like, I'm obviously not going to expect to jump really far when I'm in water or whatever. But yeah, give me that, a jump button that works basically universally all the time in a consistent and reliable way, and I would genuinely, no bullshit, call that a great start. Thanks for listening. Check out Ropotopoulos and Jcers. Actually listen to the words I say next time, and don't be a fool. May fog shroud you, may stars light your way, and may the night keep you safe.